Hey there, it's David. If you're listening to this episode, you've either stumbled onto island hopping, and this is simply an episode that you're checking out, or you've been using island hopping from the very beginning to inform your very own journey to be. If the former is you, please keep listening. But if you're interested in hearing more, I encourage you to go back to the beginning, episode 1, The Rules. Start your very own journey to be from the beginning. If the latter is you and you've been living on this island for the last 4 episodes, then welcome back. Great to reconnect. I pray that you keep on keeping on. The next part of this island, as if what we've already discussed on this island wasn't enough, deals with forgiveness. I will offer forgiveness to those who have hurt me, and I will make amends for the harm I do to others. This isn't the first part that you tackle on this island, because forgiving others and seeking forgiveness from others is an impossibility if you never learn how to understand by listening with a servant's heart. You can never truly forgive others or seek forgiveness from others if you're living your entire life trying to always be understood by others. For a person who is always trying to be understood by others will forever have an axe to grind. The axe called the desire to be understood. The axe of always trying to make others hear, see, understand, and agree with your opinions, perspectives, and positions. Whereas seeking forgiveness and offering forgiveness eliminates any and all axes that need grinding. Because seeking and offering forgiveness completely disposes of any and all axes, disposes of any need to always be understood, thus opening the door to understand by listening with a servant's heart. For a servant's heart is a heart that both seeks and offers forgiveness. This is gonna get deep, but isn't it time? At some point, every baby has to move from milk to solid foods. So, come on, baby. Let's go island hopping. A person who is always trying to be understood will never take the time to listen with a servant's heart. If one never takes the time to listen with a servant's heart, it'll be impossible to realize a need to seek forgiveness. Because someone who is always trying to be understood will never know, or care to know for that matter, if any harm has been caused by their opinions, perspectives, and positions. On the other hand, a person who is always seeking to be understood will very quickly expect others to give and to seek forgiveness. For a person who is always seeking to be understood will feel offended by the perspective that others aren't listening with a servant's heart. For offense is taken because of one's perspective that nobody is understanding their opinions, perspectives, and positions. Thus, if you make it a practice in your life to constantly be understood, you'll never seize the opportunity to make amends for the harm you do or have done to others. For you won't see it. You won't see how your opinions, perspectives, and positions hurt others. For you'll be too busy being hurt because of your perspective of not being understood. This resulting lack of forgiveness combined with a lack of understanding is a relationship killer. As we learned on an earlier island, truth can only be found through relationships. I can't be me without you, and you can't be you without me. So if you don't foster relationships through listening and forgiveness, you'll never find truth. Yes, you'll cling to your own truth, but you'll never experience the glory of discovering the depth and intricacy of actual truth. For the truth is this: some of your opinions, perspectives, and positions are right and true, but It's also true that some of the opinions, perspectives, and positions of others are also right and true. No fractured, faulty, sin-stained human has cornered the market on complete and total truth awareness, no matter what someone might try to tell you. We're all seeking, we're all discovering, we're all learning, and we're all growing. We're all on this journey together. The journey to discover what's right and true. But also on this journey, we're all discovering how what's right and true relates to our lives, relates to our opinions, perspectives, and positions right here, right now. We're all trying to figure out this crazy little thing called life. I bet you're wondering if you're someone who strives to understand by listening with a servant's heart. Someone who offers forgiveness to those who have hurt you and will make amends for the harm you do to others. Or are you someone who is always seeking to be understood and someone who never seeks or offers forgiveness? Well, there's a very easy test that you can take. No, it's not a multiple choice, tell me what you see in this ink blot kind of test. It's the honest examination of your life, an examination of who you are, especially as it relates to your relationships with others. If you're a person who doesn't seek or offer forgiveness, if you're a person who only desires to be understood, and if you're a person who doesn't listen with a servant's heart, there's a very good chance that you're also a person who hasn't built and maintained healthy, lasting, long-term relationships. A person who finds more often than not that people move in and out of your life on a regular basis. You're also a person who will rationalize all of this away. You'll convince yourself, your opinions, perspectives, and positions, that so-and-so isn't around anymore because of such and such a reason. You can fill in the so-and-so as well as the such and such. But, and here's where it's vital to hear another opinion, perspective, and position. There's a very good likelihood that so-and-so isn't around anymore because you hurt them, for you walked all over them or simply totally disregarded them because of your overwhelming, all-consuming desire to be understood. One cold, hard fact about life is that the only constant in all of your relationships, whether they're successful relationships or not, is you. So in the very best possible scenario, you're responsible for 50% of all of your failed relationships. And in the best possible scenario, you're responsible for 50% of all of your successful relationships. And if you're honest, in most circumstances, both of those percentages are actually much higher. For the harder you work to develop and maintain healthy, lasting, long-term relationships, the more successful you'll be. Conversely, the harder you work to make sure that in all of your relationships you're being understood as opposed to understanding by listening with a servant's heart, the harder you work at being understood as opposed to seeking and offering forgiveness, the less successful you'll be in developing and maintaining healthy, lasting, long-term relationships. And I get it. It's easier to blame the other person. But never forget how you learned our 2 ears and 1 mouth perspective when you first took up residence on this island. You need to begin any pursuit of forgiveness by looking in the mirror. How can you ever expect to love your neighbor as you love yourself if you don't even know yourself? Personal recognition, which leads to personal growth, is the only pathway to relational recognition and relational growth. Thus, on this island, you're invited to start with yourself when it comes to seeking and offering forgiveness. The first thing that you want to do in order to live a life of forgiveness, a life that both seeks forgiveness as well as offers forgiveness, is to accept God's forgiveness for yourself. You're called to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Thus, loving yourself is essential if you ever dream of loving others, aka striving to understand as opposed to being understood by listening with a servant's heart. Chances are good that if you struggle to seek forgiveness and to extend forgiveness, you probably haven't truly accepted the forgiveness that's already yours through Jesus. Now, you might understand the concept of the forgiveness Jesus offers with your mind, but your heart hasn't yet been able to accept this forgiveness for yourself because you aren't able to allow yourself to love yourself. Deep down, you believe that God's forgiveness is real, but you also believe that it's only real for other people because you believe that God will never forgive you. What have you done that's so bad that you don't believe that God would ever forgive you? What happened to you that made you think that you're unworthy of the forgiveness of God? If you ever dream of moving any further on this journey, you want to stake your claim right here and spend the necessary time to get to the bottom of all of this. Maybe your struggle is found in the prospect of forgiving yourself. You know that God has forgiven you, but you struggle to forgive yourself. This will be, if left unchecked, a huge hurdle in your relationship with God, for you find yourself living in a constant state of hypocrisy. For you know in your mind that you've been forgiven by God, but you're unable in your heart to forgive yourself. So, yes, you can say all the right things, sing all the right songs, quote all the right scripture verses about the forgiveness of God, but you can't accept that very same forgiveness of God in your own life. All you can do is give lip service to forgiveness in your life, which means that all you can do is give lip service to forgiveness in anyone else's life. For you know it's real in your mind, but you can't live it as real in your heart. Whether you've been taught that God will never forgive you for what you've done, or you struggle to forgive yourself for what you've done, you find yourself stuck in a life where you declare with your lips that God has forgiven you, but you believe in your heart that God hasn't and will never forgive you. You're stuck in unforgiveness because of your guilt and shame. Guilt is believing that you did something bad or wrong, something that hurt someone else or even hurt yourself in some way. There's healthy guilt, for guilt is a great motivator to make things right. No amends were ever made except out of a need to deal with some form of guilt. When you realize that you hurt someone and your guilt leads you to apologize, that's healthy guilt. Yet there's also unhealthy guilt, like guilt that's used by others to motivate you into behaving a certain way or thinking in a certain way, like institutional guilt. This is known on the journey to be as shoulding on yourself and others. Unhealthy guilt is the enemy, for it will eat you alive from the inside out. It will teach you that you're not good enough and that you're not doing enough. A great example of unhealthy guilt is the long-standing tradition of the church making people feel guilty if they don't attend worship every Sunday or give at least 10% of their income. This type of shoulding all over you guilt is used as a motivator for people to live into an institutional expectation. Unhealthy guilt can also spring up in dysfunctional family relationships as well as dysfunctional personal relationships. In these instances, like institutional guilt, family dynamics and relational dynamics can attempt to dictate your behavior. When a desired behavior isn't realized by a family member or a friend, guilt is used to bring you back in line, to bring you back to what someone else thinks you should be doing or how you should be acting. This use of unhealthy guilt is a product of our culture that desires to create winners and losers. It's the product of people not listening to each other with a servant's heart. It's a product of the competition model under which our world expects us to live. If you don't seem to be winning, getting the other person to do what you want them to do, use guilt. Now that's unhealthy. Shame, on the other hand, is always unhealthy. For whereas guilt is believing that you did something wrong or bad, shame is believing that you're wrong or bad. Guilt can be the result of your conscience, for even little children who don't yet know how to speak can communicate to those they believe they've hurt and attempt to make things all better. Yet shame can only be taught. You can't shame yourself. You can guilt yourself, but shame is always the result of someone or something teaching you shame. Someone putting you down. Someone teaching you that you're unworthy of love. Teaching you that you're a bad person, not just a person who has made bad decisions. Guilt deals with behaviors. Shame deals with identity. Guilt leaves room for you to love yourself so that you can love others. Shame leaves no room for loving others, for shame refuses to allow you to love yourself. Disclaimer time. If any of this describes you, there's a possibility that you'll need more than what you can glean from just listening to a podcast. There's no shame in seeking help. And if at any time on your journey to be you feel as if you're in the deep end and you don't know how to swim, seek out a professional who'll give you swimming lessons. Seek out good counsel to help you process and heal. It's that important. Once you truly accept God's forgiveness in your life, once you accept that Jesus' death on the cross covers us all, which includes you, you'll begin to live in response to this truth. You'll live as a forgiven, sacred child of God. You won't simply do what you think a forgiven, sacred child of God should do. And this identity will be the filter through which your entire life will flow. Once you begin to live your entire life in response to this truth, you'll lose the need to always be understood. You'll lose the need to always be right and to always appear as if you have everything under control. Once you're able to take off all those masks, you'll be free to forgive those who have hurt you, and you'll be free to make amends to those whom you've hurt. Now, this won't happen overnight, and you'll make mistakes. You'll hurt others without making amends, and you'll hold grudges longer than is healthy, wealthy, and wise. But when you realize that this is occurring, you'll embrace the forgiveness of God that you now know is in your life, and you'll move forward. How will this happen? How will you be transformed from someone who can't seem to forgive themselves into someone who is fully embracing the forgiveness of God? It all starts with memorizing the mantra of this island. I will do the next right thing. What's the next right thing for you to do? Well, besides making sure you continue to listen to Island Hopping, I honestly can't tell you what your next right thing to do happens to be. Only you can answer that question, for only you can truly understand where you are and who you are right here, right now, at this point on your journey. Your challenge in defining the next right thing lies in your ability to understand who you are without judgment or condemnation, without unhealthy guilt or shame. In other words, your ability to be real with yourself and with God, fractures, faults, warts, and all. Because until you're real with yourself, you'll never be able to judge the rightness or the wrongness of any next thing.
Hey there, it's Crystal. Island Hopping is a production of Journey to Be Ministries and is sponsored by Beneva Christian Church in Sarasota, Florida. You can find Beneva Christian on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and the Beneva Christian app, as well as their website, benevachristian.com. If you'd like to contact Pastor David, just drop him an email at islandhoppingpodcast@gmail.com, or you can text him by clicking on the link in the show notes.